person who hadn't yet said a word. "I think we'll vote now. Go ahead, Patsy." "Wait a minute." Joe was already plenty angry without the fool reporter interrupting every 2 minutes. "The board is not accepting public comment," he said. "You can't just vote," the reporter said. "Nobody even knows what you're doing." "There's no requirement to schedule public hearings before we apply. Go ahead."
"Mrs. Brown," Patsy said.
"Joe, you're sure we'd vote again if it's approved?" Louise said. "That's what it says."
"Well, I'd want to think more about it, but to apply, I'll say yes." "Mr. Esterhaus?"
"Yes."
"Eliza?"
"I vote no."
"Mr. Harris?"
"Yes." So it passes. Good.
"Mr. McCoy?"
"Well, it's already passed, so it doesn't matter." Patsy waited.
"Are you abstaining?"
"I suppose I'll say yes, since it doesn't matter anyway. But I know it won't get approved."
"That's 4 in favor, 1 opposed," Patsy said.
"And if it does get approved somehow," Randy was saying, "I think a lot of people will have a lot to say about it." "You bet they will," Wade said. "There will be time for public comment," Joe said. "Everybody will have plenty of opportunity to say their piece." "But it won't get accepted," Randy said, "so it doesn't matter." Well, they'd know soon enough. And it wasn't just that people here in the county could fight with each other. This would have people outside fighting too. That made Wade worth watching. Or maybe it wasn't worth anything. Not anymore. Just let the lot of them have their way and do what they wanted. He was still hating being here, because now was time for the last item, and the hardest one. Not hard for the others, just for him, and maybe for Louise. "Final item. Proposal to put up a suitable monument in the flower bed outside the courthouse in honor of Morton Walker and his service to the county." Silence. For this, not one of them dared to say anything. None of them had any right to say a word, even Louise. For 32 years, Mort had been on this board, a better man than these 2 school children arguing over every blamed thing. Who knew how the idea had gotten to her head 10 years ago? She'd run in every election she could since then and never gotten more than a dozen votes. She'd run last November against Mort, an insult to the whole county, but nothing to even take notice of. Then Mort had died 3 days before the election. Joe forced himself to look to his left, past Wade, and there she was, sitting where Mort should have been sitting right now. She'd gotten her usual 10 votes in the election, but there was no one else who'd got any, because Mort, his friend, was dead.
4 in favor, 1 opposed, Patsy said.
"Motion carries," Joe said. "Any other business?" He waited just long enough for it to be a wait. "This meeting's adjourned." He stood and walked to his right, behind Randy and Louise.
"Joe,"
that was Minnie Walker, the one other person in the audience.
"Thank you. Mort would appreciate it."
"The least we could do."
"I hope that letter doesn't cause any trouble. I'd have brought it before, but I kept forgetting."
"It doesn't make any difference," he said. He tried to leave the room before anyone would say anything else, but Wade Harris was talking to Louise. He tried not to hear it, but he did. "Mort would have voted for the road," Wade was saying. "Bad luck he died right when he did." Not even 8:30. That was one thing about old Joe being chairman. He kept the meeting short. Wade popped the Yukon into drive and started around the block. Louise was standing in the back doorway with about 4 coats on and a big white hat over her big white hair. He rolled down his window. "Hey, you want to ride to your car?"
"Thanks, Wade, but I'm just looking for Eliza."
"So what's her problem?" Wade said. "She said 10 words the whole night, and they were all 'I vote no.' That's what we have to look forward to for 4 years?"